Did ancient Romans have central heating? Yes, they did. It was not like our central heating today, but it was a system that moved heat from one central source to warm rooms. They called it a hypocaust system. It was a smart invention for its time. Our central heating usually means a furnace in a basement or closet. That furnace burns gas or uses electricity, it heats air or water, then fans blow the warm air through vents. Or pumps move warm water through pipes to radiators. A thermostat on the wall controls it all. You set a temperature and the system works automatically. Roman central heating was different. It used hot air and fire. It needed people to operate it constantly. It was a manual system. But the idea was the same heat generated in one spot spread to other rooms. It was a big step up from just having a small fire in a brazier in the middle of a room. That kind of small fire would fill the room with smoke. The Roman system was much cleaner and safer for the people inside. They mostly used the system in public bathhouses. These were huge buildings. Many Romans went to the baths every day. They needed very warm water and warm rooms, so the hypocaust was perfect for this. Rich people also had these systems in their large homes called villas. Not every house had it. Most common people did not. It was a sign of wealth and power. The system worked by building a space under the floor. This space was like a shallow basement. Small brick pillars held up the main floor. Hot air from a furnace flowed through the space. The hot air heated the bricks and the floor tiles above. Then the heat radiated up into the room. It was like radiant floor heating, but it was more than just under the floor. Sometimes the hot air also went up through hollow tiles inside the walls. This made the walls warm too. So the whole room got warm. It was an impressive piece of engineering. For people living 2,000 years ago, it was truly advanced. It showed how clever Roman builders and engineers were. They could solve big problems, like heating large buildings in cold climates. They made life more comfortable for many people, especially in the colder parts of the Roman Empire. But it was a lot of work to keep it going. It needed constant tending and a lot of fuel. And it needed many people to do that work. So, while it was central heating, it was far from automatic. It was a hands-on process from start to finish, but it certainly did the job. The Roman hypocaust system was quite clever in its design. It really used simple physics to warm rooms. The main part of the system was the praefurnium. This was the furnace. It was usually outside the main building or in a separate room. This kept smoke and ash away from where people were. Slaves would load wood or charcoal into this furnace. They kept the fire burning hot. From the praefurnium, the hot gases and air from the fire went into a space under the floor. This space was built in a special way. The main floor of the room was not directly on the ground. Instead, it rested on many small pillars. These pillars were called pilae-stack. They were often made of square bricks or tiles stacked one on top of another. They were maybe 2 to 3 feet tall. These pilae-stacks held up the heavy floor above. The space between these pillars created a void. This void was where the hot air moved. The hot air would come from the furnace, flow into this void, and spread out under the entire floor. As the hot air moved, it heated the bricks of the pilae and the floor tiles above. This made the floor itself warm to the touch. It was a very effective way to warm a room from the ground up. But it didn't stop there. To make the heating even better, the Romans also used hollow tiles in the walls. These tiles were called tubuli. They were like square pipes. They were built into the walls, usually along the edges, or sometimes covering a whole wall. The hot air from the underfloor void would rise into these tubuli. Heat would then radiate from the warm walls into the room. This created a much more even and comfortable heat throughout the space. The hot air, having done its job, would eventually escape through vents at the top of the walls or roof. These vents were carefully placed to draw the air through the system, creating a good draft for the furnace. The whole system worked on convection. Hot air rises. So, the hot air from the furnace would naturally want to move up and through the underfloor space and then up the wall flues. This natural movement, helped by a good draft, pulled the heat through the entire system. It was a very smart use of natural forces. The materials used were robust bricks, tiles, and mortar. These could withstand high temperatures for a long time. They also held heat well, so the room stayed warm even if the fire died down a bit. The amount of heat depended on how big the fire was and how much fuel was used. Slaves had to keep checking the fire and adding wood. It was a constant job. The system also needed cleaning. Soot and ash would build up in the underfloor spaces and the tubuli. This meant regular maintenance was necessary to keep it working efficiently, but for the Romans, this manual effort was worth it. It provided a level of comfort that was unmatched for centuries after their empire declined. It showed a deep understanding of how heat works and how to manage it in a large building. The hypocaust system was not used everywhere or for everyone in ancient Rome. It was mostly for special places. The two main places were public bathhouses and wealthy private homes. Public bathhouses, known as thermae or balneae, were where the hypocaust really shined. Roman baths were not just for washing. They were social centers, people went there to exercise, meet friends, talk business, and relax. To do all this, they needed different kinds of rooms. Some rooms were cool, some were warm, and some were very hot. The caldarium was the hot room. It had very hot water in a pool and a lot of steam. To keep it this hot, the hypocaust system worked overtime. There would be multiple furnaces just for one large bath complex. These furnaces would continuously feed hot air under the floors and through the walls of the caldarium. The floor itself would be very warm, sometimes almost too hot to walk on barefoot. The walls would also be warm. This intense heat created the perfect environment for sweating and cleansing. Other rooms, like the tepidarium warm room and laconicum dry sweating room, also used the hypocaust, but might have been heated to a lesser degree or for shorter periods. The sheer scale of heating these huge bath complexes was incredible. Imagine the amount of wood needed daily. It was a massive undertaking of logistics and labor. Private villas were the other main place for hypocaust systems. For rich Romans, especially those who lived in colder parts of the empire, like Britain or Germany, valued comfort. They would install hypocausts in key rooms of their villas. This might be a dining room, a main reception room, or a private bath suite within the house. It was a luxury. Most villas didn't have every single room heated. Usually it was one or two important rooms where people spent a lot of time. Having a heated room in your home was a clear sign of wealth and status. It showed you could afford the complex construction and the ongoing fuel and labor costs. Sometimes hypocausts were also found in military barracks, especially in frontier areas where soldiers faced harsh winters. This helped keep the troops comfortable and healthy. Some public buildings, like meeting halls or libraries, might also have had them, though less commonly than baths or villas. But for the average Roman citizen, a hypocaust was out of reach. They relied on smaller, portable braziers that burned charcoal or wood. These were smoky and less efficient. They only heated a small area. So, the hypocaust was a luxury and a public service provided by the state, not a common household item. The practicalities of these systems were complex. Fuel was a constant concern. Finding enough wood, cutting it, and transporting it to the cities or villas was a huge task. Smoke management was important so that fumes didn't enter the main rooms, and the constant maintenance, like cleaning out soot and ashes, was essential to keep the system running effectively and safely. It was a significant commitment for anyone who owned or operated one. The Roman hypocaust system, while brilliant, came with significant economic and logistical challenges. It was an expensive luxury, not a basic utility. First, there was the cost of installation. Building a hypocaust was not simple. It required skilled labor, which meant trained architects, builders, and specialized artisans. They had to lay out the prefernium, build the thousands of pillar stacks, construct the double floor, and install the tubuli in the walls. This all needed massive amounts of building materials, bricks, tiles, mortar, and often decorative mosaics or stone for the top floor. All these materials had to be made and transported. This alone was a huge investment. Only the state, or the very wealthiest individuals, could afford such a construction project. Then came the cost of operation. This was the biggest ongoing expense fuel. The hypocaust systems, especially those in large public baths, consumed enormous quantities of wood. To keep the furnaces burning hot day and night in some cases required a constant and massive supply of timber. Imagine a large bath complex like the baths of Caracalla in Rome. It had dozens of furnaces. Each one needed to be stoked continuously. This meant local forests were often cleared to supply cities with wood. As forests receded, wood had to be transported from further away, increasing costs and logistical challenges. Charcoal was also used, which was cleaner burning but more expensive to produce. The demand for fuel was so high, it likely led to significant deforestation around Roman settlements. Labor was another major cost, though often borne by slave owners. Operating a hypocaust was labor-intensive. A team of slaves, sometimes called fornicatories furnace stokers, had to constantly feed the furnaces. They had to split wood, prepare charcoal, load the fuel, and manage the fires. This was a skilled job in itself, needing knowledge of how to maintain heat and ensure efficient burning. Beyond stoking, slaves were also needed for maintenance, cleaning out ash pits, removing soot from the underfloor spaces and wall flues, and performing repairs. This constant human effort was integral to the system's function. The social implications were clear. The hypocaust was a distinct marker of social status. If you had a hypocaust in your home, you were rich, powerful, and important. It set you apart from the vast majority of the population. The common people either endured the cold or used small, smoky braziers, which offered only limited local warmth. The state provided heated public baths as a civic amenity, but even these were only accessible because of the vast resources the empire could command. This heating technology was not democratic. It highlighted the vast differences in living standards within Roman society. The environmental impact should not be ignored. The insatiable demand for wood fuel for heating and other uses like brickmaking, metalworking, and cooking surely contributed to widespread deforestation across the Roman Empire. The smoke from thousands of furnaces burning wood and charcoal would have also created significant air pollution in ancient Roman cities. This was a trade-off for the advanced comfort and hygiene that the hypocaust provided. The economic and environmental costs were huge, but for the Romans who could afford it, the benefits of warmth and cleanliness outweighed these costs. It was a system built on plentiful resources and abundant, cheap labor. The Roman hypocaust system was remarkable for its time, but how does it stack up against what we call central heating today? And what happened to it? Comparing to modern heating today, central heating is incredibly efficient and automated. You flip a switch or set a thermostat, and a furnace or boiler kicks on. It burns natural gas, oil, or uses electricity. The heat is distributed through ducts or pipes. It's clean, doesn't require constant human supervision, and often heats an entire house evenly. We have sophisticated controls and safety features. The Roman hypocaust achieved the same goal to warm multiple rooms from a single source. But the technology was vastly different. It was manual, requiring slaves to continuously stoke fires. It relied on a simpler understanding of heat transfer, convection, and radiation, but without the benefit of fans, pumps, or intricate controls. It was highly inefficient by modern standards. Much of the heat escaped, and large amounts of fuel were needed. It produced smoke and soot. But for 2 millennia ago, it was a marvel. It provided warmth and comfort far beyond anything else available at the time. It made indoor environments bearable, even pleasant. In cold climates, it shows the ingenuity of Roman engineers who used the materials and knowledge they had to solve a complex problem. Philosophical decline of the hypocaust system. The hypocaust system began to decline with the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. There was less money to build new hypocausts or to maintain existing ones. The funds needed for such grand public works or private luxuries simply weren't there anymore. It became harder and more expensive to source and transport the vast quantities of wood needed. Knowledge was lost as society became less complex and centralized. Last 4, breakdown of central authority public baths were often state-funded and maintained. As central authority faded, so did the ability to run these massive public services. Many bath complexes fell into disrepair or were abandoned. 5, rise of simpler methods. In the absence of complex hypocausts, people reverted to simpler heating methods. Fireplaces with chimneys became more common in homes and castles during the medieval period. Braziers continued to be used. These were less efficient but far cheaper and easier to build and operate. The comfort level dropped significantly, but these methods were sustainable for fragmented, less wealthy societies. A legacy. Despite its decline, the Roman hypocaust left a lasting legacy. It demonstrated the power of radiant heating. When people in Europe rediscovered Roman ruins during the Renaissance, they were amazed by these sophisticated heating systems. Later, in the 18th and 19th centuries, engineers studying Roman systems drew inspiration for new forms of heating. Concepts like underfloor heating and wall heating in modern buildings owe a debt to the Roman hypocaust. It stands as a testament to Roman engineering brilliance. It shows that even with limited technology, creative problem solving can lead to highly effective solutions. The Roman hypocaust was, without a doubt, a form of central heating incredibly advanced for its time. It brought warmth and comfort to a select few and left a blueprint for future heating technologies to build upon centuries later. It's a powerful reminder of how human ingenuity has always strived for better living conditions, even in ancient times.